Good evening. Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us from the comfort of your homes. My name is Megan Dubois, and it is a pleasure to welcome you here this evening on behalf of the RUH Foundation. As we gather here today, we acknowledge we are in Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. We pay our respect to the First Nations and Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. I am excited to be here this evening on behalf of the RUH Foundation Board of Directors as a WLP donor and WLP Steering Committee member. Tonight is intended to celebrate your involvement in this unique women's donor program that is now in its 5th year, and to also remind all of us as women we can empower each other and achieve transformational change in healthcare for women and their families. Speaking of amazing women, WLP is so fortunate to have 2 such women who continue to lead by example. When WLP was just a vision, they stepped forward to ensure its success, supported as donors, and through public awareness and leaders in the community. Dr. Mary Kinloch, Division Head, Anatomic Pathology for Saskatchewan Health Authority, will be your host this evening, and WLP Honorary Chair, CEO, and founder of Hilberg & Burke, Rachel Mielke, who will, like you, join us virtually. I will now turn it over to Rachel. Welcome, Rachel.
Good evening and welcome to another exciting Women Leading Philanthropy meeting. My name is Rachel Mielke and I am the founder and CEO of Hilberg & Burke, and I am also so proud to be an honorary co-chair of Women Leading Philanthropy, a group that has been around now for over 5 years. This is such an exciting group of women to belong to because of the incredible change that's happening as a result of all of the founders in this group and all of the women who are doing incredible work and research to change the face of healthcare for women and their families in Saskatchewan. Over the last 5 years, we have seen incredible projects put forward and amazing work being done by the women physicians and their teams to really advance healthcare for so many people in the province. It's a group that I am incredibly pleased and excited to be a part of, not only because of the work being done in the province and my own personal journey in the healthcare system in Saskatchewan, but also because of the impacts that I know that this group is going to have in the future for healthcare for women and their families across the province. It truly is innovative, and in some cases, it's the first of its kind work and research being done in our province. I'm so excited that you've chosen to join us this evening. It's going to be another incredible night, hearing from really inspiring female physicians and hearing an update from our most recent grant recipient. So thank you for joining us and enjoy your evening.
Us and tonight, and we always know that you're cheerleading for us over in BC. So tonight we have 2 special groups of people in our audience thanks to a collaboration between the RUH Foundation and the Dr. Marc Omar Shokeir Endowment Lecture Series to make this event a success. And I sincerely welcome you both here tonight because it could not take place without your support. Also, along with the support of those who contribute to the funding of the $100,000 WLP grant each year, I want to also sincerely thank our generous supporters and acknowledge our gratitude for their support. This includes a thank you to MNP, Aspen Films, Encore Canada, D&M Images, Handy Special Events, Hilberg & Burke, and Verolingo. They do make all of our meetings seamless and make sure that you have a tax-free donation with your support to Women Leading Philanthropy. And we have a very special thank you to our program sponsor, Skye Planning Group, and owner Tracy Duff. And I would like to invite Tracy up here to share what inspired her to support Women Leading Philanthropy.
Well, thank you, Mary, and a special acknowledgement to all of those of you joining us tonight who've stepped forward as donors to advance healthcare opportunities for our female healthcare physicians. One of Skye Planning Group's goals is to ensure our clients have a strong financial future. Taking time for your planning is one of your greatest investments. Skye aligns itself so perfectly with Women Leading Philanthropy because we invest in life, finances, and health. Women Leading Philanthropy advocates for all women to take care of our whole selves, whether that be through empowering one another to advance healthcare, sharing with our peer groups what we've learned from our many talented women who have presented, or providing the opportunity to identify the need for funding for women-led projects. So I feel very passionately about the good work being done by this amazing group of women and the support that we're providing to raise funding and awareness about this program. I would encourage those of you who are here tonight as guests to consider joining this amazing group of women who are transforming the landscape of healthcare in Saskatchewan. So thank you, Mary.
Thank you again, Tracy. So last September, at the WLP pitch meeting, the donors were presented with 3 outstanding projects that were all worthy of the $100,000 Women Leading Philanthropy grant. And it was an inspiring program and event to be a part of. And tonight we're going to hear an update from the successful grant recipient, Dr. Sarah Donkers, about the progress she has made in her project, New Hope in MS, promoting functional neurorecovery through early interventions. So we're going to take a moment now to watch Dr. Donkers' application video and refresh us on what her project is and what she intends to accomplish.
My name is Sarah Donkers. I am an assistant professor in the College of Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan, where I get to teach and research neurology content, specifically the neuro rehab content. I'm actually a physical therapist by clinical training and a neuroscientist by research training. And so I get to combine both of my passions and look at interventions, neuro rehab interventions that promote recovery of function, especially for people living with multiple sclerosis or MS. So MS is a complex disease. It affects predominantly women, but it also tends to onset when women are in the prime of their lives. It limits their ability to engage with their community and really participate in their meaningful life tasks. And we need to do better at addressing this. MS is progressive, it's degenerative, and currently there is no cure. A diagnosis of MS often comes with vision problems, neuropathic pain, overwhelming fatigue. And this fatigue sometimes means you have to choose just one thing you can physically do in a day. It can come with balance challenges, walking, coordination, muscle spasms, and muscle weakness. And this can affect anywhere in the body. That includes the muscles that control our bowel, our bladder, and our sexual function. Another challenge of MS is the symptoms fluctuate. So this can mean unpredictability and uncertainty, which is hard to deal with. There's currently no way to know when MS will worsen or progress. That represents a substantial gap in our understanding of MS, but also our ability to deliver preventative care. So our project is a 2-part research study. We'll look at access to evidence-based neurorehabilitation, and for the first time in Saskatchewan, we'll be able to use blood samples to look for new and unique blood biomarkers of MS disease progression. We will deliver and evaluate a neurorecovery-based bout of rehabilitation. So this is designed to focus on improvements, focus on gains in function and symptom management, and that's not always the case in a degenerative disease. MS is a condition that can take so much. So we want to focus on supporting women with MS to develop the skill set that can help them live well despite their MS.
When I was first diagnosed with MS, besides the physical things that happened, so for example, when I fell at the Calgary airport, which was humiliating, that really wasn't the worst thing. The most difficult thing was not being able to talk to even the experts about what I was experiencing because my language was gone. The thing that I have always been good at is being articulate, and I lost that. And it was absolutely disorienting, and and terrifying. Because if you don't know how to describe what you're feeling, then how do you get help? And how do you let people know what is wrong? And that's the biggest piece for me with MS that's difficult. And one of the things I said to my spouse in the early part of 2016 when this was all going on, is that if and when my brain gets back to some kind of equilibrium, one of the things that I would do for the rest of my life was to be an advocate for people with MS. Because so many of us, with the pain medications that we're on, with the fatigue, when it comes to advocating ourselves, it's very difficult. I hope that the research that we are embarking on here is going to help other people talk about their experience, be able to state what it is they need, and be able to find some form of equilibrium and health as we can understand it with those of us who have MS.
For dozens of years, my patients always ask me the same question. Even though I'm on an MS drug, why am I getting worse and what can I do to stop it? That's why this study is so important. This team of brilliant women are going to actually crack the code and answer this question. First, they're going to do it clinically with a rehab intervention so people get treated right away. And second, they're going to do it scientifically by using cutting-edge molecular technology to find a biomarker that measures why people get worse.
Please welcome 2023 Women Leading Philanthropy Grant recipient, Dr. Sarah Donkers. Hello. Thanks to see you again.
You too. Thanks for having me. Happy New Year.
Thanks. It's been a busy year, and this is the second time that myself and the donors have seen this video, and even watching it for a second time, there's so much more that I gained from it. So I really think that your project has a lot of layers to it, and we know that our donor pool, that it's more than just them donating and walking away. They really do want to hear about the accountability from the project. They want to hear about what the transformation has been made. So you captivated our audience with your proposal in September about identifying the biomarkers in MS patients and targeting a specific neuro rehab program. Tell us what you've been doing since September.
Lots of excitement, lots of celebration, right? I had a lot of congratulations, right? It's an honor. But I remember it like it was yesterday, right? The voting meeting, even though it was last September. I'm like, update, I just found out I won this award. But I remember floating, right? For days afterwards, because it wasn't just, yay, we get to do this research. It's a project we're really passionate about. But it was so empowering to be in that room, to hear the other women's projects, the feedback afterwards from the women in the audience who were there in person, and just knowing it was voted on by women.
You have your own cheerleader crew.
Yeah, but not just cheerleader, like support and empowerment, right? Because you go up to it and you're a little nervous, and then you're just like, what am I nervous about? It's such a supportive environment, and yeah. So I've been celebrating, I've been floating, and I've been planning. So a lot of work goes into preparing these applications, preparing your project and your grant, and that's the easy part, right? So when you get funded, you're like, yay, oh, and
The execution.
yes, the execution. And like you said, we've got a lot of moving pieces. There's many layers to this project. So it's a lot of details planning, right? We're doing the blood-based biomarkers, so it's planning on getting the blood samples. Who are we going to sample? How much money can we dedicate towards sending these samples out to get analyzed? And then it comes down to the details planning of training our research personnel, right? So our project is also going to deliver care. We're hoping for 30 women living with MS, but it's an approach to neural rehab that's not part of usual care right now. So it is research-based. We have to pay our interventionists. And so I've been busy finalizing all the training for that. And thankfully, everything's in place. We've got our ethics, we've got the money now, and we actually have sent out our first round of blood samples to get analyzed.
And where are they going to get analyzed? And in the video, we talked about cutting edge molecular techniques. And give us a primer on what that means.
Okay. Can I back up and talk about what a biomarker is
Yes,
first?
we all want to know what a biomarker is.
Okay, so a biomarker is like an umbrella term. It's a fancy way of saying we're looking for something, bio, short for biological, and marker is like an indicator or a characteristic, right? So you can use bodily fluids, blood, urine, super common, tissue, which you would know as a pathologist a lot about, right? Looking at the histology in tissue. You can use physiological measures, right? So blood pressure, or I look at brain activity, or imaging. So, biomarker is a fancy way of saying, is there a signal or an indicator that we can look at that's reliable, easily measured, and gives us some sort of idea of what's going on in the body with regards to health or a disease.
And in this particular project, you're trying to delineate between two different patient populations.
Maybe.
Okay.
So we're using blood, and then we're sending it out for RNA sequencing, which is one way to analyze the blood. And to really simplify it, because I'm not the cell biologist here, we'll have Hannah at our next meeting, and at our next meeting, actually, we can show some of our data, right? We'll have results by then, which will be great. But basically, we're looking at genes. It's not the genetics, but the genes and the proteins. So it gives us a snapshot of what is turned on or what is turned off at any given time. And we're specifically looking at a protein, and we're trying to see if this protein can be a marker of nerve cell health, right? And we're hoping to see if we can catch people who are progressing so we can intervene, or we can see if people are responding to the intervention. Right? So often biomarkers are used for diagnosis. That's how most people know of them. But they can also be used to monitor a condition progression. They can be used for looking at treatment response. So if you're given a drug, to see how you're responding to that drug, prognosis and predictor. So we're really looking at that. Can we find a biomarker that's looking at the neurodegeneration or the neuroprogression, and seeing if we can look for disease progression and halt it.
So how did you know how to look for this biomarker? Has it ever been done in humans before?
Oh, great question. Biomarkers have been around for a long time, and biomarkers have been around in multiple sclerosis as well. But MS is really a two-part disease, right? There's the autoimmune component of it, and then there's the neurodegeneration component of it. So most of the biomarkers and drugs used to treat MS really look at the inflammation, which is important. And it's a huge advancement. But now that we've been able to better minimize the immune attack and the inflammation, it's started to reveal, especially in animal models, how this neurodegeneration still exists. So on the video you saw Hannah, who's my research associate on this project. She's the actual cell biologist. And then she works in Dr. Michael Levin's lab, and they have done this in animal models of MS. So it's the first time we're looking at blood biomarkers in MS in humans in Saskatchewan, and also the first time we're looking for those unique blood-based biomarkers for disease progression.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so then based on what you find in the biomarkers, how is that going to translate into what you're going to intervene with to the patients with their neuro rehab?
Yeah, so there's sort of three phases. There's the exploratory, right? So we've got blood that we're looking at already. We've got characteristics of the women that living with MS that blood has come from. So when you're exploring something for the first time, that's really good, right? You can see, okay, is there people we should be targeting? But we're also, the intervention's gonna run for this project, the neuro rehab recovery intervention that women with MS will have access to because of this funding, is gonna run throughout the year, in 8-week blocks throughout the year. But we're going to take blood 5 times throughout the year. So we'll have a period of monitoring what's happening without intervention, and then we'll also have pre and post intervention. So yeah, we're investigating/exploring, we're looking at change over time, and then we're also looking at response to intervention.
So can you tell us about how this early intervention neuro rehab would differ from what patients with MS and their diagnosis would get with physiotherapy, a standard of care?
Yeah. So multiple sclerosis, unfortunately, is still a progressive neurodegenerative condition. So traditionally, the approaches that have been used to help women living with this condition have been about compensating, right? So if their function declines, right, their balance or dizziness or walking starts to decline because it's a neurodegenerative disease, and also for safety, like compensation does have its role, don't get me wrong, but it's been very much like, okay, we'll get you a brace for that, or we'll get you a walker for that, or we'll get you a scooter for that, right? And you're sort of left with, okay, I'm going to get worse, or now I've got this weak leg. And with all the advancement that's happened in MS, it's still a progressive disease, but we've learned, and it's really being emphasized how important it is to try and have these bouts of improvement, right? So with intense task-specific training, we call it. It is intense, though, right? It's like learning a new skill in the face of damage going on in your brain, right? So it is intense practice, and we look at trying to improve things, right? So traditional physio in our current system tends to be more compensation, which sometimes has its place, but our study is providing the space, the support, and the expertise to give women this gains focus, this improvement focused. So regardless of what someone's functional impairment is, we'll go in and we'll look and say, okay, what are the impairments or symptoms that are contributing to this? What ones can we modify or have a better treatment over? And we just give a lot of space and support, and then a tailored program to focus on improvements.
Can you tell some of our donors about how this is unique in terms of, are there other places across Canada that are doing some of this work, or?
Saskatchewan's really leading the charge in MS rehab research. Yeah, we've got great collaborative clinicians here. I have amazing colleagues that I get to work with. Dr. Catherine Knox is a physiatrist and a former director of the MS clinic, and we have run a number of studies. And then we also co-chair an initiative that's trying to get evidence-based practice for rehab in MS across the country. So yeah, we really look at all sorts of levels, right? You're like, okay, how can we better understand the disease? How can we better understand how our interventions are working and who should have what when? How can we take what we already know works well in research but is not accessible in clinical care and do better at trying to get it out there?
So it really does sound like the patients that you're going to be bringing into this project are going to be getting something very special.
We hope so. We hope so. So that's the other conundrum, is often there's a gap between what is known to be beneficial in research versus what is feasibly delivered or accessed in care. So, our project is innovated and doing something new, and we're looking at these biomarkers, but we're also doing that over the course of giving women access to neurorecovery-based rehab while creating these little packages of material to help support healthcare providers currently treating women with MS on what they should be doing, right? So that when the project is done, it lives on, its impact lives on.
So you talked a little bit about your lab at the start and how there was some celebrations. Can you tell the donors a little bit about how the outreach has happened towards your lab, say from the university or?
Yes, so this, when funding gets announced, people are like, oh, congratulations. But then the idea, like what you're trying to do, like with the actual funding, but with your bigger program of research, picks up a lot of interest, right? So I think that's important for donors to know. It's not just you're funding this project, it's done. It's you are connecting people, like you're putting off little sparks that gain momentum, right? You're connecting people to have the conversations. Like even we've had conversations, right? So yes, this study is helping us fund blood-based biomarkers, but it has already started the conversations of, okay, should we be doing blood analysis routine in the clinic? What would it take? Okay, we're sending our RNA sequencing analysis out. Is there anyone else doing it here on campus that we can connect with? And yes, we're looking, when you do a research study for an intervention, the ideal goal is to like refine it, take your lessons and put it into clinical practice. But just by this project getting announced that it's funding, it's already caused waves locally and nationally on changing care and advocacy to evidence-based practice in MS rehab. So yes, busy.
That sounds really great. I'm sure that the donors love to hear that they are making that difference within the care and that it's hitting so quickly and close to home.
Yeah, and they're making care at so many different, or they're making impact at so many different levels, right? Like at the end of this year, at the end of this funding, we're going to have the preliminary information we need from the blood work to apply for future funding to still explore, right? So we've got new hope looking down this blood-based biomarkers, but then we've also had the conversations that are going to change how clinical care is delivered, right? So it's just impacting on so many levels.
So Trisha's giving me a signal that I don't know if it means keep going. Okay.
Oh, I can keep going.
So a lot of things that we talk about, and a big part of the project was about the funding and how the funding is going to be used, because that really does solidify. We've got a lot of professionals in our donor group that want to know how, what needs to be paid for, or how you're going to split this $100,000.
Right. So we've already started spending the money. Hit my bank account, I think last week, and I was like, all right. So we are budgeting basically 40% to 60%. So 40% is paying for the cost of drawing the blood. Once we've taken the blood sample, we have to prepare it. So we buy these little kits that help prepare it for the RNA sequencing, and then we send it out for RNA sequencing. And that's not inexpensive. So, we're protecting a bit of the money so that we're making sure we are not spending it on all the samples up front, that we can actually look at blood samples throughout the entire year. So we have that change over time. And then the other 60%, because the intervention that we're doing is not part of routine care, we have to hire interventionists to do it.
I don't know that I have heard that term before.
Oh,
Is
interventionist. Oh, so in
special-
research,
Okay.
in research, when whoever your trained professional is that's delivering your intervention for research, we refer to them as interventionist. So they can be.
So who would that be in this?
For our study, we have an OT, a PT, and a psychologist, occupational therapist, physiotherapist, and psychologist.
And they also have training. They also have to.
Yes. Yeah. So we hire people, or we've hired people who have experience with multiple sclerosis and have a skill set, and then we train them in, the protocol, in the new approach for this intervention. And because it's a research study, we have to pay some of my. I have a student doing their master's who will be part of this project, and a PhD student. And then I always try to get as many med students, physiatrists, neurologists, or other type of healthcare providers in their training. I try to get them involved not just for the research exposure, but for being interested in multiple sclerosis.
And that's also going to even spawn the uptake of this quicker.
Yeah.
If they're involved in the research, you can't help but translate that back into your clinical practice.
That's
when
the
they come
hope.
in, too.
Yeah, that's the hope. So yeah, the rest of the money is going towards that. And I just remembered one other thing I wanted to say about biomarkers. They're excited. They're kind of maybe confusing. It's a bit of a sexy term, right? I'm looking for brain-based biomarkers. They tell you one thing about a disease, right? They tell you how the body is responding. They don't tell you how that disease is affecting the person functionally. It doesn't tell you how a person is feeling, and it doesn't tell you how that disease is impacting their quality of life. So in addition to looking at the blood-based biomarkers, we also are looking for other clinical markers, right? So we are doing some brain activity measures, transcranial magnetic stimulation, and then we do clinical measures and, of course, quality of life measures.
Well, we can't wait for you to come back in 6 months with Hannah and some of the data and present it back to the donors in the group. And we're really excited for the June meeting.
Yes,
thank
me
you-
too.
Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you. And thank you for letting us do this project. We're clearly very excited about it.
Told you tonight that there are two groups of special people to see our guest speaker, Dr. Jillian Horton, and it's interesting how these two distinct groups can intersect on the same message. So both of my kids, when my kids turned 6, we put them in piano lessons, and Madeline was first about 4 years ago, and then William started this past year. And when William started, I thought, why do my kids get to do all of these fun activities and I'm the one who's driving them to it? And I said, why don't I start taking piano lessons again? And so I signed up with my kids' teacher and thought only as far as doing all of the fun stuff about piano, and forgot about the recitals, which is how I found myself this past Christmas on the roster to play Angels We Have Heard on High with all the other children at the Christmas recital. So the week before the performance, I'm with my teacher and we're playing it as a duet, and we finish and there are no mistakes. And she turns to me and says, Mary, the angels are dutifully talking, but I don't think anyone has heard them on high. And she said in very plain language that I had completed all the technical components of the piece, and said in a very gentle and loving way, she said, I want you to take this next week before we play it in front of people, and I want you to think about how you would like this song to sound. And it was pretty immediate that kind of resonated just within my own life, and I wonder if it resonates with some of you. The two groups of people here tonight, we have medicine and we have our donors, which we know are accomplished professionals from all parts of Saskatchewan, who probably have all completed the dutiful components and technical components of successfully executing their life. And if you're in medicine and watching this, congratulations on your undergrad and your residency and your fellowship and your licensing and your maintenance of competency and your privileging. And we haven't even got to the daily practice part yet. And it just took that moment for me to think, but how do you want your life to sound? And the group of women philanthropy donors and grant recipients over the last 5 years have ensured that the way that life sounds for women and their family at RUH is a better experience. We've been able to provide universal tumor testing for women with cancer to determine if their cancer is hereditary, tailored shoulder physiotherapy for women who have had breast cancer surgery, enhanced gynecologic surgery recovery, and HPV self-testing for those that were absent from our cervical screening program. And the other group tonight is the Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine, which I have had the privilege of being a member of since 2008 as a resident and now as a pathologist. And one of our pathology family members, Omar, who died in 2019, exemplified how he wanted his life to sing. I don't know that it was all hymns and Christmas carols for Omar, but it definitely wasn't dutiful talking. So before I introduce Jillian Horton, I would like to have my colleague and mentor, Dr. Fergal McGee, who's the Provincial Department Head of Pathology and Lab Medicine for the SHA, share with us a bit more about Dr. Marc Omar Shokeir.
I wish I know we were talking about music, but so I don't know anything about music in Omar's thing, but what I would say is I don't think Omar's life was Mozart. I think it was more like jazz in that you never quite knew where it was going. So thank you all. It's a privilege to be in a room like this, I have to say, so thank you all very much. But back to Omar. So I'd like to welcome everybody here, those in the room and those at home, to the second lecture in the Dr. Marc Omar Shokeir lecture series. I have to begin by recognizing the tremendous loss to the Shokeir family caused by the sudden death of Omar in March 28th, 2019. And we express our sincere condolences to the family, but we also take this opportunity to thank them for their generosity in their ongoing support for this lecture series. And I would like actually that we recognize that now. So Dr. Shokeir was born and grew up in Saskatchewan, where he attended the medical school at the College of Medicine, U of S, just around the corner. He completed his pathology residency training in UBC, where I had the privilege of meeting with him and getting to know him. He was an absolutely brilliant resident. He was also a brilliant practicing pathologist. He worked in Vancouver, BC, Bellingham, Washington State, Red Deer and Calgary in Alberta. And at the end of his career, he returned to Saskatchewan and worked in Prince Albert and North Battleford. During his 27 years as a physician in Canada and the United States, he helped and mentored numerous people, established and improved many different laboratories, served on various medical associations while publishing extensively. But that wasn't just who Omar was. Omar was a keen athlete. He competed in 5 Ironman triathlons. He undertook many alpine climbs. And he rode his bicycle, and I had to think about how would I describe the way he rode his bicycle, and I settled on determined abandon, once inadvertently connecting his bicycle to the car in front of him. Now, the deal was, Omar was always trying to go faster, so he had persuaded a colleague to drive in front of him, and he would cycle in the slipstream. But he cycled too quickly and somehow locked his handlebars to the bike. The guy driving the car didn't know that, but miraculously, nothing serious happened. But this is the piece I find so funny. I was thinking of this last night. Omar is one of that select band, growing but select band of Canadians who have competed successfully on Jeopardy. And he was highly successful. I found him to be one of the smartest, funniest, and most engaging people that I've ever met. And for that, I'm always extremely thankful. His personality, leadership, collaborative and clinical skills are deeply missed. Tonight, Saskatchewan celebrates the good fortune of producing the remarkable individual that was Omar Shokeir. And while acknowledging that we miss him, we gather here to demonstrate that the best manner of honoring Omar is by hosting an event in his name, which represents superior presentation and informed discussion. I think that's what we have here tonight. So thank you for your attendance virtually and in the room.
As we all leave tonight, I do hope that you've had a deep sense of pride as being part of this group, and the personal contribution that you've made has already provided so much transformation for women and their families in the healthcare that they've had at RUH, and the accomplishment that we've had in only just 4 years. And after such an inspirational message this evening, I hope that you're excited to talk about women leading philanthropy. And I also hope that you're excited to talk about mindfulness, not just with your family and friends, but your colleagues in your work family as well too. And thank you all for joining us tonight. We can't wait to see you all again in June, and stay safe and good night.